Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be doing a complete crested gecko care guide. And I wanted to do this video for a while. I never did really get around to it. Don't know why. I never came up to do this video. But today I am prepared, I am ready. I have my gecko right here. Say hello. This is Machi. He is what I believe, partial Dalmatian eyelash crested gecko. No one knows what he really is because he's just a mixture of like quite a few different things. But this is just him. You can kind of see some of his Dalmatian spots and his fat rolls as well because he's quite chunky. But yeah, this is Machi. He's about 2 years old, 2.5 years old or something like that. So I've only had him for 2 years maybe. I got him Christmas of 2017. So yeah, this is him. And today we are going to be talking about how to care for your crested gecko. And he's my feature for today's video. He's just kind of climbing up my arm. You can't eat my hair, thank you. So let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is the terrarium you should get for your crested gecko. Now, if you live in America, the standard is you need a minimum tank size of a 12-inch by 12-inch by 18-inch. And I'm gonna show you his terrarium right here. He has an Exoterra terrarium, and he really likes it. I don't remember the exact dimensions of it, but it's pretty big. You can kind of see it behind me and in the clips that we're just playing. That's his tank. And another thing you're going to want to make sure you know about for your crested gecko is that they are very arboreal. So they really like to be up high, they like to be in trees. When you get a tank, you want to make sure that it is taller, or that it's more tall than it is lengthwise. It's good to have some floor space for them to hunt and stuff, but you do really want to make sure that it's high enough to fulfill their want and need of being up high, to be in the trees and such. So what I like to do is, I don't remember the exact dimensions, but again, you just saw it and it's pretty tall. So what I have in there is I have a bunch of leaves and vines and different things like that. He has a little coconut hide. I recommend you give your crested gecko at least one hide. Sometimes they won't use it. Machi uses it sometimes. It's just like a little hanging coconut. But again, it's hanging because he likes to be up high. And he also has something called a repta hammock. It's just like this woven little hammock that he has in there. And he also has his little hanging ledge so that he can get food and water. So moving on, we are going to talk about substrate next. One thing I really recommend for your crested gecko's substrate is this thing called repta bark. This is what it looks like right here, and this type of substrate really retains moisture. So I'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but your crested gecko actually needs to have a minimum humidity at least 50%. And this substrate really helps retain moisture and keep it at a higher humidity. So that's why I like that like a lot. It's really good for that. It's, you know, more thick, so it really holds it in nicely. But if you do have a bioactive setup for your crested gecko, or if that's something that you want to do, you're probably going to want to use bedding that has more nutrients in it for the live plants and things like that. So one bedding I'm going to recommend for that is called bio bedding, and you can get that off of Josh's Frogs website. And I'll leave his link down below, so you can check that out if you want to do that with your terrarium. One thing that you're gonna wanna know about as well is you can actually, instead of having fake plants and fake things, you can actually have a completely alive setup for your crested gecko. Now, a lot of people do this, a lot of people see better results with their crested gecko or whatever. That's something I would really like to do in the future with Machi. I'm probably going to make a video on it and talk a little bit more about that in the future. But yeah, you can put like live plants, live you know, a whole cleanup crew called isopods or anything like that. It's very, very naturalistic for your crested gecko, and I've heard a lot of good things. One video or channel you can check out for that if you want to look into that now before I make a video on it or whatever. One video I will recommend is by Tyler Ruggie, and he actually set up a completely bioactive terrarium for his crested gecko, and he also did something like that for his bearded dragon, and I think he did it for like his hedgehog too, which is really cool. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there, that you can actually do a bioactive setup. Next, we're going to be talking about the temperature and the humidity that you should have for your crested gecko. For your temperature, you're going to want to make sure that you keep it in between 72 and 75. You definitely don't want to go above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and I am talking Fahrenheit. Definitely don't want to go above 80 degrees Fahrenheit for too long, because it can actually be fatal to crested geckos. They are very, very sensitive to high temperatures, and that is something that you definitely need to know before getting one, in case you live somewhere where it's very, very hot or very, very cold. Because if it's very, very cold, your crested gecko is going to get very sick, and it's not going to move very much and probably stop eating and eventually pass away. Or if it's too hot, the same thing can happen. So what I want to talk about to help with this is I want to talk about different lighting things that you can do for your crested gecko. One thing that you can do is you can buy a heat lamp. And what this heat lamp does is it's in the name, it gives off heat to the tank or terrarium, whatever you got, and it'll keep it pretty warm. And if you don't have a thermostat set on the light, you're gonna have to keep an eye on the temperature, and you're probably gonna want to get yourself a thermometer and probably a hygrometer for humidity as well in the tank, so that you can keep an eye on how hot it is and how humid it is to make sure that nothing bad happens. So that's one thing you're probably gonna want to do. Or if you live somewhere where it's cooler. I'd say if you live in like Texas or somewhere where it's warm, you might actually want to look into getting a fan for the room, or making sure that the AC is up high enough when it's really hot, because if it gets too hot, it's over. And you definitely don't want that to happen to your pet. So what I would recommend is to definitely have something to keep track of the temperature, and you can probably make assumptions on what you need from there. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is called UVB. And UVB are lights that give off certain nutrients and stuff for your crested gecko. They actually absorb these nutrients through their skin. So you can turn on the light if it's a dark day. Otherwise, natural daylight is perfectly fine for them. You just want to make sure they're not getting lethargic or anything. That's clearly not good for them. So that's one thing you're going to want to make sure you have. This way that they can create enough nutrients and stuff themselves naturally and continue on with their gecko life. Next, we are going to be talking about humidity. Now, for humidity, again, you're going to want to add at least 50%, but it technically should be kept around 70%, because anything lower than that can really mess up their sheds, and it's very unhealthy for them. You want to make sure that it's humid enough for their skin, and so that they can properly shed. This goes for snakes and any other animal that sheds. So one way to really help with this, if you don't live in a humid place, is by lightly misting a couple times a day the tank with distilled water. Now you're going to want to make sure you use distilled water, because any water that has too many nutrients or hard chemicals in it can really harm your crested gecko. And you definitely don't want that to happen. So I recommend distilled water. That's what I use for Machi, and I've been using it for 2.5 years, and it's still going perfectly fine. But one thing you definitely want to make sure is to not let the tank get too wet. Now, I actually bought a thermometer and hygrometer that says, it'll read for you what it's like in the tank. Like, it'll tell you if it is too dry with a sad face. It'll tell you if it's comfortable with a happy face. and it will tell you if it is too wet with a sad face again. You want to make sure it's not too wet in the tank because that can really make it way too humid and very unhealthy for your crested gecko once again. And another thing I wanted to talk about is you can get a thermometer with a hygrometer. So mine right here says 71.2 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has 67% humidity. Now that's one way to easily keep track of how humid and hot or temperature is in the tank, and it's been working incredibly well for a very long time. Again, I've had Machi for like 2 years now, and he's still doing amazing. So next we are going to be talking about crested gecko diet. So what we are going to call this diet is, it's like a mixture, almost like baby food, that you mix again with the distilled water, and you give it to your crested gecko and they eat it because it tastes really good. So what I like to use is called either Machi or Pangea. There are other brands that make similar things that are just more company brand, like Zoomed and things like that. They make their own foods. I really like to use Zoomed, and yeah, this is how it's basically done. And your crested gecko can also be fed feeder insects as well. You can give them crickets, roaches, and any other, insects like that that can be fed only as a treat. You don't want to give them too much of it because it's very fatty and it can become unhealthy for your crested gecko. Now, what you're also going to want to know about crested geckos is their hours that they're awake. So if you're someone who wants to have an animal that you can, play with during the day and, things like that, a crested gecko may not be suitable for you. I only have him out right now for the sake of this video. It is about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and he's only going to be out for this video. I don't take him out during the day, like ever, unless it's, for a video or something. But they're actually awake all night and sleep all day. And I wasn't about to film a video at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I decided to take him out briefly, and so that he could be a feature in this video. And yeah, that's the only reason why he's out. But you should probably know that they are awake during the night and they sleep during the day. So they are called nocturnal animals. And so if you want something that you can play with during the day, I don't really recommend these guys. But I mean, again, that's completely up to you. So next we're going to be talking about is their temperament. As you can see, he doesn't really care about anything and he kind of hates everything. So yeah, this is kind of what he does when he comes out. He just kind of sits there, and sometimes he jumps if he wants to go away. But I wanted to talk to you guys about the temperament because this is something I feel like you should really know before you get a crested gecko. So crested geckos are very skittish at first, and you should definitely let them chill for like a week when you first get them before you take them out or do anything like that with them. You don't want to stress them out too much because they can do this thing. They can drop their tail and it doesn't really hurt them. They do bleed, but it's not enough to be, a health concern or anything. It's what they do when they feel scared or skittish. Another thing they do is along their side like this, right here, they actually turn a different color. So if you notice that they're regularly a color and then they start to turn a different color, you definitely need to know that they are very, very stressed out and that you need to do something to help with that, or if you're handling them or something, leave them alone. As you can see, he's fine. This is his normal color. But again, if he turns like a very dark color, like he'll be black basically over here. I will definitely put him away if he does that. But That's something you definitely need to know. You definitely need to bring them, you know, out of their cage and handle them or whatever. You want to do it at night. You don't want to do it during the day because that's when they're sleeping and they're going to be more upset with you about it. Another thing you should probably know is to feed them at night because that's when they eat and you don't want their food like drying out or something. So I feed him at night. Last but not least, I want to talk about some unique things you should know about them because they're pretty fun and funny creatures. One thing you should know is if you grab it by its tail and it says,
"Oh no, I feel like something's, trying to grab me and hurt me, and I feel threatened."
Again, they're going to completely drop their tail. They're not going to have a tail anymore because they don't grow back. They're going to have a little bit of a frog butt forever. And yeah, but this does not hurt them. You should know this. And if it happens, don't freak out. It is normal, actually. A lot of people cannot keep a crested gecko their whole life without dropping their tail. Now, I've had him for 2 years, and as you can see, he still has his tail. He hasn't dropped it. That's because he doesn't really care about anything, but you know, it's fine. But yeah, it doesn't hurt them. It's not like a bad for them to not have it. It just is basically used as like an oh crap, I'm being threatened kind of thing, so that they have like a chance to get away instead of just dying. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you, Machi, for being today's video's feature. So mad at me right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video helps you out, and good luck with your crested geckos if you're getting one, or if you want one, or if you have one and you have no idea what you're doing.
But you probably shouldn't get one before you know what you're doing.
But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, comment any questions you have, and make sure to subscribe to see more videos like this. I have many animals, and I'm hoping to be more active on this channel. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.